let's think about healthy progression through development. This is a healthy person now. We're thinking healthy people. Typically, when you're little, okay, you're working on your sense of physicality, okay, and that goes up to about the age ages of 2.5 to 3 years old. And then you start working on your emotionality, or at least you're supposed to, from the ages of 2.5 to about 7 years. And then after that, you're working on your mind, your brain. So in a sense, there's a physical development through the body, through the heart, and through the mentality. But actually, it doesn't just stop. So the physicality constantly is being developed. The emotionality is constantly moving on. The mentality is constantly after that point. So we're always developing aspects of ourselves, but it starts off as physical. And think about this. For a child, they need to start to learn to walk. First they crawl, right? And then they start to sort of totter around and walking, and then they start walking and standing and things like that. That's gross motor development. And these are aspects that are associated with the lower aspect of the mind. The first part of the brain in evolution to actually have developed was this brainstem area, okay? And this is the first part that's actually used. The cerebellum is associated with coordinated motion, okay? And these are associated with basic responses of the body, breathing, heart rate, temperature, and things like that, okay? And these, again, some of these hook up into the brain regions, okay? But as a child, you need to start crawling, standing, and walking. That's gross motor. Fine motor, picking up things, right? Think of how many muscles it takes to actually clamp a finger. The body has to learn that, okay? It doesn't happen quickly, okay? Language starts developing. We explore our senses of looking and hearing and tasting. A child, probably when they're born, sees nothing but light fields. Somehow or other, they're trained to see trees. We train ourselves to see hands and fingers, okay? We don't need to worry about object permanence. That just means that when you take an object away, they still know it's still there somewhere. It doesn't disappear from existence. And there's an ego development at this time. So believe it or not, the ego, the sense of me, I, comes, okay? And so what do I mean by ego? So if we're thinking about a natural, normal response of ego, the noun, here's definitions again, is the person's sense of self-esteem or importance, okay? That's from the dictionary. Psychoanalysis says it's the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious, okay? It has a sense of personal identity. Philosophy say it's a conscious thinking subject or person. And I put in my own definition here. This is good. We come up with our own definitions. I consider our ego to be our uniqueness, which differentiates us from others and is expressed as our quirkiness and our characteristics and represents our identity on our most basic level. And I actually consider our identity to be an essential quality, okay? So in a normal growing ego, this is what's going to happen. We're going to look at how things get dysfunctional a little bit, okay? And just going back to that brainstem area, the brainstem, and this is an important reason, we don't need to memorize all this. This is just our autonomic nervous system, which is associated with it, which is associated with our flight and fight response, our trauma responses, okay? And so the sympathetic, just know that the sympathetic nervous system activates you. Oh, I got to run right now, or I got to flee, or I got to fight, okay? The parasympathetic calms it all down. Okay, you can rest now, you can relax. The danger is gone, let's go. And recognize this affects lots and lots of body systems. Next, we go into the next phase of our development. Again, if it's normal, we would actually move into our emotionality somewhere around the ages of 2.5 to 7 years old. We learn to discriminate and express and process our emotions, okay? We start to think in some level symbolic thoughts, right? People tend to be thought of as animals, right? I still think of my father. In my dreams, my father is still a Tyrannosaurus Rex, okay? I still see him as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So we symbolize people at this age as people become bears and skunks and rabbits and things like that, okay? And if this happens with the limbic system, which is associated with a whole bunch of regions associated with not only the midbrain and some of the lower brain, but also some of the cortex too. So this is a very complex structure, which is associated with our flight and fight response and emotionality and memory. There's some level of memory processing here also, okay? And so again, this flight and fight response, the information comes in, a part of our brain says, oh my God, there's danger. We can do one of three things. We can run away, okay, which is the flight. We move away, or it activates our sympathetic nervous system. And I have a whole bunch of things. I mean, there's a whole list. Your eyes become wide open. You have darting glances. Your leg and your breathing changes to really fast. You want to run, okay? Or you may want to fight. right? You start getting this sense of aggressiveness and moving toward and wanting to hurt the other who's hurting you or threatening you, okay? And then there's another thing that what people have just realized in more recent years, this concept of freeze, immobilization, which most people thought, oh, I'm stuck in my flight or fight response and I can't make a decision. Really what happens is your body goes into a freeze, which is actually regulated by a different set of nerves, the vagal nerve, okay? And I know a lot of people have seen this polyvagal theory recently, which is all about how supposedly the vagal nerve is associated with the relaxation. This is a usurping of the parasympathetic nervous system. That part of ourselves that's supposed to make us relax actually causes us to collapse in an instant. And if you ever notice, say an eagle picks up a rabbit, the rabbit immediately goes limp. Part of that is possibly that as the rabbit's body goes limp, it becomes very heavy all of a sudden. It may actually fall out of the eagle's clasp. The other thing is the eagle may think it's dead, drop the rabbit for a moment before it wants to kill it, and the rabbit will run off now. So it's actually playing dead, okay? So recognize that this freeze response, these are all natural responses that we have, okay? And so we're going to look at how this sort of gets usurped in human beings, okay? And I just put this in. You can look at this on the sheet, just recognizing that this is a very complex system. Lots and lots of, you could have dissociation, numbness, depression, panic, fear, anxiety, worry, rage, anger, irritation, all this. You could shut down, feel hopeless, and feel trapped. All of these things can come out of these various phases, okay, when the flight, fight, and freeze response is activated. I want you to recognize that this is a normal function of animals. Peter Levine, who has done humongous work with the somatic experiencing psychology, has shown, and he looked at animals who were tranquilized, like a tiger or a bear, and notice that when the animal comes out of it, the animal gets up, it has to go through a series of sort of shakings in its body and a series of breathing patterns that allows it to release the trauma of having been tranquilized. All animals do this. If you see a goose land in water, you notice when it lands, it shakes its butt really fast. It's releasing the tension of the flight, really the trauma of excessive flying and use of muscles. It releases that trauma by shaking its butt, and its body recalibrates. It comes back to homeostasis, and it gets back to this joy and present and groundedness in the present moment. He found that if the animals didn't do that, they died very soon because they couldn't survive in the wild. Their bodies couldn't get back to homeostasis, and therefore they couldn't hunt anymore. Their social interactions were off. The animal just lost its ability to survive. Okay, so it's a natural function, which is interesting because humans have lost this natural function. We don't really allow ourselves trauma. Think about people who go into shock. Their bodies are shaking. What do we normally do with someone who's going into shock? We stop them from shaking their bodies. Peter Levine actually had this happen to him. He had an accident. And on his way to the hospital in the ambulance, his body started shaking, and the ambulance, the EMT, started stopping his body from shaking. And he said, no, wait, let it go. And it was just micro movements of his body, just small movements. And by the time he got to the hospital, his body had released the trauma of the accident. It didn't release the pain and things like that, but it released the trauma of the accident. And the EMT guy says, oh my God, I've been doing this wrong all these years. So for our authentic expression, most of us don't have, we come as children and we are playful, we're quirky, we have all these wonderful qualities of ourselves, okay? And they're not respected. Because there's, again, this tribal culture of you need to conform to what's normal, right? And so typically our unique expression is embarrassing or troublesome to our parents, who then tell us to act normal. Whose definition of normal are we looking at here? Okay, so each society has their sense of what normal is. But authentic expression requires that we have a sense of equality with our peers. There's truth, there's clarity in the way we speak to each other. We're allowed to express our feelings, right? We're allowed to have our thoughts, okay? Our thoughts are okay, and we're respected by others, okay? And so let me say, associated with this is there's a sense of congruence, and I want to read what I have here. It's the essence of authentic can be captured in a single word, congruence, alignment and agreement. This includes congruence between intent and words, between thoughts and intent, between words and feelings, between verbal and nonverbal expression, between facts and words, between words and actions, and congruence between the speaker and the listener as humans who respect each other as equals. Our society has real problems with this about us. And actually, most of us, this is actually what's going on with most human beings, is that we're afraid to express our authentic nature because we've been told it's wrong. There's something wrong with it, okay? And so let's go on with this. Our parental and societal expectations. You're expected to go to school, to go to college, to get a degree, to get a successful job, all right? I'll give you my example again. I loved poetry and theater when I was little, okay? Around 5th grade, a teacher said my poetry sucked because I didn't follow rhyming schemes normally, okay? So I said, oh, well, I'll show him. I'll just do what the rest of my family does, which is the sciences. So I went through and got 3 degrees, all the way up to a PhD. Spent 12 years doing research until I finally said, oh my God, this is killing me. This is the expectations I had from my family. I hate this. What do I want to do? I want to do theater, and I want to do all the other things that I love, and that's what I did. I left that, and I said, oh my God, I have to do this. But we follow our expectations. I had a man who was 60 years old I was talking with. He was still trying to fulfill his father's expectations, and his father was dead for 20 years. This is how deep this type of dysfunction goes in us. We're still afraid, even after long periods of time, to do what we want to do, okay? Because it usually goes against what society says you can make a living at, okay? Okay, mirroring of parents and society, right? So our brain is very interesting. It has a set of neurons called mirror neurons. And if you notice, you had a picture of Barack Obama with the kid, you notice in conversation, if people mirror someone else, it builds rapport between people. Okay, so if you're sitting in a room and someone has their legs crossed, if you cross your legs and act the same way you do, you're in a sense getting into the same mode of consciousness as the other person. The neuro-linguistic programming people know this very well. They say if you take on exactly how a person sits and looks and feels, you will actually take on their thinking pattern. Okay? The other thing about the motor neurons, so one is, I started expressing, as a little child, my essential qualities start coming out. My playfulness, I'm running around, okay? My parents say, stop that, right? My playfulness isn't being mirrored by my parents. It's not being okay. That essential quality is no longer okay to express. And we'll go into what happens when that happens, okay? But I'm not being mirrored. My intelligence may not be mirrored, okay? The other way of mirroring happens is, we don't even realize it. I saw this picture of, or a video actually, of a man walking down the street and he had a limp. His son was walking next to him limping. He was mimicking his father, okay? His neuron said, to be like daddy, I have to limp. Okay, he may actually limp for the rest of his life, for all we know, okay? But recognize that any constricted patterns that our parents hold, and I'll tell you, our parents held a lot of them. We as children will try to mirror because that gave us rapport with our mother and father and siblings. When we didn't have those patterns, we felt out of sync. How many people remember being called the black sheep in their family, right? A lot of people truly feel that way. Oh my God, I was the black sheep. I didn't fit in. Because we really didn't mirror our parents well. And then we got the trauma, right? It comes along. No, we didn't fit in. Something causes us to have to fit in. And so we start mirroring physical patterns. And so I start bringing my chest together to close down my heart and my love, okay? I may put my back out because I have a brother who'd like to hit me in the back. So I have a back, right, that I tend to push the spine out so it can take the blows and not be hurt, okay? So recognize that we have lots of physical patterns that we took on to try to protect ourselves, okay? But also we took on from our parents, especially in the sexual centers, okay? Our society has a tremendous shutdown of the sexual center, so a child is not going to really feel comfortable expressing the sexuality, especially when the parents say, stop that. Don't touch yourself there, that's not right, okay? So all of this compromising, all these things with the emotions are compromising our centers. They're taking away our access to essential qualities that we no longer are allowed to express normally. Okay, we can't express our identity, we can't express our playfulness, we can't express our intelligence right, even our emotionality is not right, our identity is wrong. So the expression and development of our essential qualities is not supported, and therefore we have to hide them away. Why? Because we think that they're going to be destroyed if we keep displaying them. Okay? Our emotional expression is suppressed. It's not acceptable behavior within our family, so we have to suppress our emotions, adding more pressure to our system. All right? And typically, emotions are seen as weaknesses in our society. We experience physical, emotional, and mental abuse or trauma that is usually too painful to bear, and there is no safe place in which to discharge that pain. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Our empathic skills, all human beings are empathic. Namely, when we're connected, and even when we're not, we sense actually what's going on in other human beings. A lot of us, we can walk into a room and feel like, oh my God, someone in this room is really angry. And we look around and we can almost get a sense of who it is. Okay, but recognize that because we don't recognize that we are empathic beings, sometimes the weight of the world will actually flood through us. And it hurts to have the world's pain of 8 billion people roll through your system and say, oh my God, what the heck was that? Okay, and so recognize that our empathy, because it's not trained into us, it's actually usually considered not good. Our empathy can become a place of pain for us, and so traumatize us. Okay, and our needs and intelligence aren't honored, and we're compromised in our training as children. So what goes on? Let's say I have curiosity. Okay, so the curiosity is a child goes around and says, I just want to ask questions. The questions are like things like this: is, oh, every day, why did he do that? What is that? Why is the sky blue? What's that thing? Why is the peanut butter that shape? Why is that? Yeah, and the child goes around asking why. And after a while, sometimes parents get fed up with that and say, will you just shut up and stop asking questions? Go to your room and be quiet for a while. And the child's like, oh my God, mommy and daddy are angry at me. What did I do wrong? Right, boom. Mommy and daddy must be right. This is one of the first confusions. Mommy and daddy are always right, so therefore I must have done something wrong. Think about all this. Most people think, what did I do wrong to get my mommy and daddy upset at me? And you didn't. You're just asking questions. You were being a normal child who, around 3 years old, starts asking why. Why is this? Why is that? And so what happens is you come up with the conclusion. You make a vow to yourself, a contract to yourself. I can't ask why, or I can't ask for help. And really what that comes down to is I can't ask anything from anybody. And so what happens is this is our curiosity. My curiosity, I can't use my curiosity anymore. That curiosity is a sense of asking questions. So I need to hide away my curiosity somewhere. So I take a 3-year-old part of myself called curiosity and box it away somewhere. And I box it away with a bunch of real big sadness because I don't want to box it away. This sadness makes me really sad. I can't ask questions anymore, but there's a little bit of anger too. And there's always confusion. What did I do wrong? Okay? So we have these defensive mechanisms to keep myself from going to my curiosity. Defensive. So if someone asks me to be curious or asks for my help now, no, I can't help you. I'm too busy right now. I'll get angry. And I'll push them away. By pushing someone away, I make myself safe. So this whole box here in front of me, this whole big circle, red circle that's on the screen, is to make me safe. The defense mechanisms are all there to make me safe. In my head, I constantly ask. I say, I can't ask for help. Or maybe I'm stupid, or I'm not worth it, or I'm not lovable. Constantly flowing through our heads. Why? Because we have to remember, I can't ask for help. It brings us back to the sense, oh, my curiosity needs to be hidden. I can't ask for help because if I bring my curiosity out, somebody may get mad and traumatize it, and I don't want to destroy it. So we have behaviors that keep people away. We have behaviors that keep ourselves away, all right? Behaviors that, like, okay, let's work with curiosity today. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in my recliner. I'll give you an example. I'm sitting in my recliner and I might ask this question or work on a part of myself. And 30 minutes later, I wake up and I go, what happened? And what I realized is that my body, my defense mechanism, didn't want me to go to it and actually put me to sleep for 30 minutes to keep me away. Okay? And so we have defense mechanisms. We eat, we drink, we sex, we distract ourselves from the pain of this sadness, okay? Because this sadness is really large. I bolded it for a reason. And also, what happens is when we constrict, when we make this constriction, this pattern of defense, we actually constrict a physical part of our body. Okay? And that physical part of our body, say it's my arm, is now numb. Okay? I actually, my curiosity, for some reason, was associated with my forearm. And now my forearm's numb. I can no longer feel it. And the blood flow doesn't go well there anymore like that. And it feels cold a lot of the times. Oh my God, what's that on? Okay. And so you can actually go around your body and say, do I feel numb here? Do I feel pain? I had a naturopath touch a part of my left ribs, which almost made me jump off the table. And I said to him, how can I actually feel that much pain and actually never feel it? So he touched a spot to me that was just hugely sore, but I couldn't feel it by myself when I touched there. So I was numb to my own pain, okay? So we create these things, okay? And think about this. For a little child whose nervous system is growing, okay, to have a huge emotional charge flood through it like an ocean is really hard, okay? And what the child thinks is, oh my God, I'm going to die. And so the child's like, I don't want to die, okay? So they have to suppress that huge emotional wave, and they shove it into this defense mechanism, a sadness. And now think about this. Do you think I'm going to touch this defense mechanism anymore? This part of my body? No, because when I touch it, I think I'm going to die. Death is always associated with these things because the emotional tone of that is so huge that my little system couldn't handle it. And I say, oh my God, I'm not going to go there anymore. Okay? So who's in charge of these defensive structures? Well, our identity is, unfortunately, we place that responsibility on the ego. It's responsible for our safety and the maintenance and imagining of what I call our buttons. So these defense mechanisms are really, do you have buttons that people push and they activate and they get you angry? All of these buttons are parts of yourself that you've hidden away, okay, that have defensive mechanisms associated with them. And if you actually look at what causes you to have a button, you actually have to realize that there's a part of you that's associated with you that you've hidden away there, okay? These buttons exacerbate the mind-body split, okay? And really think about what's going on here. A finite aspect of ourself, our ego, really, which is this local aspect of ourselves, right, which is really a lot of thought forms. A local finite aspect of our being thinks it has to protect an indestructible, infinite part of our being from annihilation. This is a big misperception because the ego doesn't think the body has the capacity at the young age to protect the body. Okay, so the body is put out of the picture. The ego says, oh, you can't do it. You're too small. You don't understand. I'm going to come up with a defense mechanism. And unfortunately, the defense mechanism has typically a very typical pattern of expression. Okay? And it doesn't think the body has the capacity. And so this is where we lose that sense of the trauma response. The ego takes over the body. It takes over the body one muscle group at a time. By hiding and hiding each of these buttons in our body, and we have hundreds of these buttons, okay? Trust me. We have hundreds of these buttons. It contracts our body. Look where the arrow is. Right? It contracts our body all over the place, okay? We're numb to our body. The only place that we can exist, okay? Because every time we contract, we dissociate from that section of our body, okay? So this is what's happening, is we're creating button after button after button after button. Intelligence, compassion, resilience. Here's a trauma here, sexuality. Kindness, power, identity, clarity, anger, unconditional love, curiosity, all stored all over the body as these little constrictions of our body. And what happens is, as you can see from this previous slide, we become a puppet for the ego. The body becomes a puppet for the ego because the ego is now controlling all the body circuits, okay? And I found doing a lot of work that we're actually taking back. Part of our evolution is taking back the circuitry. So the body naturally runs its own circuits. Right now, the ego has usurped the circuits to manage this library of buttons. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here for a second, and I want you to do something for me. I want you to just close your eyes and just take a few breaths. Slowly in through your nose and out through your nose. And if that doesn't work, you can breathe through your mouth. It doesn't matter. So it's a breathing in and a breathing out. And you're just trying to settle down into the body. Just settling in with the breath, that's all. Now I want you to just be in your head and just be aware, okay, of your hands from your head. So you can connect. I'm up here in my head, my hands are down there somewhere. So as you're breathing slowly, you got a sense that you're up in your head and your hands are down there somewhere. Now see if you can move out of your head into your hands. It's not that hard, but it's also not as easy as it sounds. But you can actually have a slight sense of movement from the head down into your body. So see if you can, and then go back and forth. Oh, I'm in my head. No, I'm down in my hands now. In my head, back down in my hands. Just do that a few times. I'm in my head, back in my hands. And just stay in your hands for a few moments. And just see if you get your hands there. And what you want to try to now do is see if you can balance in your awareness both of your hands, being in both your hands at the same time. So you don't want to keep going back and forth. Our mind's very good at going very quickly back and forth. See if you can be in your hands simultaneously. And just get that sense. What happens when you balance both sides of your body like this and hold it simultaneously is that you're using both sides of your brain at the same time, which means your brain synchronizes. And when your brain synchronizes, you begin to feel the stillness that's inherently there. Okay, so let's go on. Ready? So that's a good exercise. If you balance any part of your body, your hands, your knees, your feet, your ears, it doesn't really matter. Anytime you balance something that's two-sided, something on both sides, your mind becomes still because both sides of your brain are being used to actually do that process of holding the awareness. Okay, so it's a very simple exercise to do. And the more you do it, the more you actually really get a sense of that stillness that arises. It's always there. So recognize that all these essential qualities that we've hidden, curiosity, intelligence, they're always there. It's just that there's a whole bunch of conditioning underneath it, right?